right, so I have had both mid-size trucks, and then this is my first full-size truck. I've been through 2 Tacomas, so I drove a Tacoma in high school, and then I drove a 2020 TRD off-road Tacoma just a few years ago. And then once that started feeling a little small, that's when I decided to move up to this 2019 F-150 XLT with the 3.5 liter EcoBoost motor. All right, so here in a minute, I'll walk you around the truck and show you everything that makes this the better option for me. We'll go over all the pros of a full-size truck compared to a mid-size truck. And then I'll go over a few of the cons, a few of the things that I might dislike that I miss coming from a mid-size truck, coming from a Tacoma. Now, I better make this clear right now too. I have nothing against mid-size trucks, and I actually really loved my Tacoma. This is definitely not like an unbiased opinion where it's a versus video that might help you decide what the better Overlander is, mid-size, full-size. This isn't that kind of video, because for me, I've already made my decision, and I'm just gonna explain to you why a full-size truck does work much better for me compared to a mid-size truck. All right, let's walk around the truck. We'll do the outside, we'll do the inside, and I'll show you all the reasons, all the pros of having a full-size truck as an Overlander and a camping rig. All righty, let's start right up here up front with probably one of the most important things that you gain out of having a full-size truck, and that's a bigger motor. So in this truck, I chose to do the 3.5 liter V6 EcoBoost engine. So it's super powerful, twin turboed, like everything about these motors is just amazing. So I'll talk more about towing and some other things here in a little bit, but when it comes to the motor, it's just nice, whether you're towing something or not, to have a huge jump in power compared to something like a Tacoma. And I'll reference the Tacomas just because I had one, but it's going to be similar for any of the Rangers and Colorados and all those kind of things. You kind of expect a slightly smaller engine and a little bit less power in something like that. Now, those mid-sized trucks, they don't really need to pull huge trailers, so it's not like they need to go crazy on the motors. But even when you're not pulling anything, they just don't do great, especially on like highway and freeway travel. So around town, there's nothing wrong with those motors. They pull just fine. They can get after it when they need to. But I noticed on the freeway, like Tacomas will struggle, and I did have 33-inch tires, but a Tacoma will have a hard time staying at 80 miles per hour and have it feel really comfortable. So obviously they can go like 95 plus, and that's not a super hard thing to get them there. But like, you just know when you're driving a truck, when you're driving in a vehicle, if it feels like it's liking that speed, that kind of thing. And Tacomas just don't really love to be at those higher speeds, even in like the 75 to 80 mile per hour range. Whereas in the F-150, it's just like any full-size truck for the most part. I mean, the power specs are different depending on what brand you're going with and what model, but for the most part, any truck like this, especially these 3.5 liter EcoBoost F-150s, they're just gonna be fast. Like, you can go 100 miles an hour without even realizing it. So super nice. Biggest thing, or one of the bigger things on the list today, will be the increased engine size. All right, next on the list for pros of a full-size truck is a bigger tire size you can fit. So to fit a 35-inch tire on a Tacoma, you got to do some serious cutting. You got to have a pretty serious lift and a lot of other different things that make it really tricky. Whereas you can fit 35s on an F-150 pretty easy. You can do it even with just a leveling kit. A lot of people run them. I happen to have a 3-inch lift on this, which makes it even easier to fit them. But again, even with the leveling kit, it's super easy to throw 35s on. And with some very minor fender liner trimming, you can get them to fit and not rub pretty easy. Unfortunately though, you always want what you can't have. Now, I wish really badly that I could fit 37s, and I think it's probably doable, but then you're back to the Tacoma thing. You're back to the mid-size truck thing where you got to do a ton of work and some things that are a little bit sketchy as far as trying to fit that. So it's probably a never-ending process. If I could fit 37s, I'd probably want 40s. All right, next up is the truck bed. Now, I know that whether you're in mid-size or full-size, this varies a lot. For the F-150, I have the 5.5 foot bed. You also have an option for a 6.5 foot bed, and here's why it's a little bit of a toss-up. On a Tacoma, you either have a 5 foot bed option or a 6 foot bed option. So technically you could get a Tacoma with a 6-foot bed, whereas I only have 5.5 right now. I'm also pretty undecided on which one I like best. My brother has he has a F-150 just like mine, and he has the 6.5-foot bed on his F-150. And if I was buying a new truck today, I honestly don't know what I would decide on. There's a few different factors you got to think about, and then again, there's pros and cons for both. So I guess it's kind of an opinionated thing, but I kind of wish I could maybe have like a 6-foot bed, something right in the middle. Overall, I do like having a 5.5-foot bed. It's nice to be able to keep the overall length of the truck a little bit shorter. It makes it a little bit nicer for parking in parking lots. And then I guess when you are out on the trails, flipping around, flipping UEs and stuff like that, does help to be a little bit shorter, I guess. But I haven't really felt like if you had the 6.5-foot bed, it'd be really that much of an obstruction. So maybe the 6.5 is still a great option without too many cons. All right, so here at the back of the truck, a few things I want to bring up. One is the fuel capacity on these. So I have the upgraded 36-gallon fuel tank on this. Again, this is where it just might not make as big of a difference from mid-size to full-size, because the Tacomas, and again, I don't remember these numbers exactly, but the Tacomas are in the 22-ish gallon range as far as the tank size. And then the smaller option on the F-150s, I think, is around there too, at 22, 24 maybe or something. So if you're getting a new truck, you're looking for a used one, buying a new one, I would highly recommend searching out for one that has the 36-gallon fuel tank. So that just gives you every benefit you can imagine. It helps, you just simply don't have to fill up as often. But when you're on off-road trails, it just gives you a little layer of extra security. So this is a big truck. There's no reason it should have the same fuel tank size as a mid-sized truck. So having that much larger one helps that if you want to do some much larger routes out in the backcountry and you're off-roading and overlanding all over the place, again, just a slight layer of protection, a little bit of a bonus security tip to be able to just have more fuel storage right from your stock tank. All right, so now the reason we're at the back of the truck is because I want to bring up your towing capacities and your payload capacities. So this is another one that is a huge pro and a huge jump for a reason to go into a full-size truck. It varies on what engine you have, but because I have the 3.5 liter in this truck, my towing capacity is 13,200 pounds. That is a lot of weight for a half-ton truck. So pretty much any trailer that I want to pull, I can pull with this, and it pulls it really well. So I'm not pulling a trailer all the time. If I was constantly pulling trailers, you might prefer something like a larger 1-ton diesel or something. But for when I am towing a trailer, to have that high of a towing capacity is so nice. Whereas a mid-sized truck, when it comes down to it, it just really can't tow anything. Payload in these trucks is 3,200 pounds, which is quite a bit. Now in a Tacoma, you're around like 1,600 pounds of payload capacity. So that is a big dip coming from 3,200. So it just gives you some extra cushion. Makes you a lot safer too. If you're over your payload, you're not safe on the road. If you have too much weight in the back, your front wheels are gonna kind of drift all over the place, and you're not gonna have as safe of a vehicle. All right, let's make our way inside the truck. I'll show you some things in there that I like about full-size trucks. Before we do, this doesn't have anything to do with mid-size trucks. It just has to do with Ford. One thing I really want to point out is this keypad is the coolest thing that any manufacturer has ever added to their vehicles. And someday, if I go away from owning a Ford, it is going to be very, very hard to not have one of these keypads. If you're not familiar with these, it is literally just a combination code electric keypad right here. What it does is it makes it so that you can get in and out of your vehicle just by typing in a set code, and you never have to take your keys with you anywhere. I've owned this truck for a few years now, and since the beginning, since owning this, I don't know that my keys have ever left my truck one time, because you can literally take them out of the ignition, leave them in a cup holder, and lock the doors, and then when you come to get back into the truck, you can just use the keypad to get into it, or they have a really cool app that you can start the truck, unlock it, and lock it right from the app. So I know that's a petty little thing that I've gotten used to, but I will be kind of annoyed next time I switch vehicles and it's not a Ford and I gotta carry my keys around again. All right, now we're inside the truck. Here's the first thing about having a full-size truck is just way more room inside the cab. Your cab is just much roomier. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'2", and I needed to be able to fit into a bigger truck. The Tacomas are pretty good. They're not as bad as some vehicles that I've been in, but as far as just big spacious area, as you can expect, it's a bigger vehicle, so your cab space inside is much better, especially for a big guy. Okay, so while we're up here in the driver's seat, let's talk about off-road controls. This is one place where the F-150 in particular doesn't necessarily outshine a mid-sized truck. In fact, it actually has less off-road features than my previous Tacoma. I had a TRD off-road package Tacoma, and so it just had some extra off-road controls. So it had like hill descent, and it had like the really cool crawl control where it could crawl you out of places when you've gotten stuck, and a few other like kind of fancy bells and whistles. But I've now owned this bigger truck for a few years, and it wasn't until I started thinking about the things that I wanted to say for this video that I realized that I haven't even thought about downhill assist control and crawl controls and all those things until I was thinking about this video. So again, it obviously shows that I haven't regretted or missed having those higher bells and whistles since owning this truck, because this still has the necessities that you would need for off-road. And those big things are that you can switch into four-wheel drive high. You can also switch into four-wheel drive low. And then the other big benefit is that this still has a locking rear differential, just like the Tacomas, just like most of the mid-sized trucks. So just by pulling right here, you now have a locked rear differential that makes a really big difference if you're really off-roading these things. All right, that pretty much sums up the controls up here. Let me show you a few things in the back seat. All right, so this is the Crew Cab or Crew Max. I'm not sure whatever they call this one, but it's the one with the biggest back seat, the full size with full size doors. And it is so spacious. There is a ton of room back here. All right, so one thing I didn't even think about when looking for a full size truck that ended up just being a huge bonus was not realizing how much extra storage space that you would have. So up front, even just like your center console is like 4 times the size of the one in Tacoma. And that's just because they have to make everything so much more compact that your seats can't be as spread apart and stuff, so your center console is like this big, whereas this one's just huge, tons of room. You can still buy the organizers and stuff for it, so you can just fit tons of stuff in there. In the back seat, I have so much more storage than I used to in my Tacoma. Underneath the seat, once you lift up the seats, you have tons of space underneath there. What I have in there right now is a Husky bin. I also use Husky floor liners as well. It's the same company that makes these kind of plastic mats right here. But it's just a Husky storage bin that kind of slides in there and secures down with some straps. And what that does is it just gives you a big area, or a bin almost, to where all your stuff can kind of go in and you can organize a ton of gear. Otherwise, it's just a big flat space under there, so it would kind of slide around if you didn't have that. So that's been super nice to add a bunch of functional storage to it underneath the seat. And then behind the seats, you got a lot of storage area as well. So behind that car seat over there, I'm able to keep like a bunch of tire changing equipment. So a bottle jack and some tire irons and some different things. And then on this side, from the factory, I don't know why Ford does this, but they don't provide you with a rear seat latch release. So on Amazon for a few bucks, or Built Right Industries is a company that makes them as well. It's literally a very simple piece that you install on the back side of this seat. So this is the driver side that I'm on right now. And so in order to get that to release and gain all that storage, you just gotta buy and install that little piece. And then that seat folds forward, and then you can fit a bunch of gear back there as well. All right, so that's a few of the things about why a full-size truck has been such a great option for me. Again, like I warned you at the very beginning of the video that this wasn't going to be an unbiased opinion where I was doing a versus between a Tacoma or a mid-size truck and full-size trucks. I'm pretty biased towards this for me, for sure. And then hopefully that helps a few people understand my reasoning behind this as well, and why it's been such a great rig for me. All right, so there's only a few things that I could think of that bother me a little bit about full-size trucks. And again, they're things that aren't really that big of a deal, since this is mostly the perfect solution for me. One of those being that there's a little bit less support as far as aftermarket stuff goes. There's still a ton of stuff and a bunch of websites that give you tons of options for F-150s, but for overlanding type stuff, specifically off-road type stuff, you're gonna have some more options for the mid-size trucks. The other thing I kind of already mentioned when we were sitting in the cab is a few less off-road controls, but again, for me, it's something that I haven't really noticed, even though I've had this truck for a few years. Again, I haven't really ever been in a situation where I was like, man, I really wish I had downhill descent control or something right now. So it hasn't been a huge deal for me. Okay, and then the only other con that I could think of maybe had to do with suspension setups. So it doesn't matter whether it's a mid-size truck, full-size, 1 tons, all the different options. There is suspension available that will make them incredible. You can spend as much money as you want on any of those trucks to have incredible suspension. So it's not like any of them are limited to having less good suspension, but from a stock standpoint, a mid-size truck is just lighter, and because the payloads and stuff are lower, when they're stock, they ride a lot better. So I waited a few years before upgrading to this rough country Vertex suspension, which I now love. But before I did that, I just could kind of notice that just having a leveling kit on this was really pretty bad. It kind of just beats you a little bit more. Whereas if you're going and comparing that to a stock mid-size truck, the Tacomas with just a leveling kit, they just ride a lot better off-road without any suspension upgrades. But that can always be solved with some upgraded suspension. So now that I have a better suspension, and it's nothing even super crazy, but it helps a lot and has kind of eliminated that issue. But for a while, when it was just a leveling kit, it was bad enough that it really made it uncomfortable to drive off-road. You had to go really slow. And now I feel like I have more of a Baja type option where I can really pick up the speed a lot more and get places more comfortably, and it's more fun. All right, so there's my argument, if that's what you want to call it, for full-size trucks for overlanding and camping. They do a really good job for that, for my needs, for whether it's an overland trip or it's camping or just as a daily driver, being able to tow, all the things that you would need out of a truck, I really enjoy out of this size of a platform. I get that everyone's different, and I still love Tacomas, love the mid-size trucks. Let me know in the comments what you think of the full-size Overlander platform, and what you're driving now, pros and cons about what you like about full-size trucks, or give some arguments for the mid-size trucks out there. If you made it this far in the video, appreciate you watching. If you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed yet, I do a lot of this stuff, a lot of truck review stuff, and we do a lot of camping and overlanding and all sorts of outdoor activities. So please subscribe so that you can see when I post videos, and would love to have you be a part of the channel. Thanks so much for watching. We'll catch you next time.